think we should give a bit of a shout out to the team, out there.
Team?
Yeah, our team out there. They do all the work after we sit in here waffling away, and they make it all happen, don't they?
They add the magic.
They add the magic. They take our raw ingredients, and believe you me, they're raw. And then they turn it into the wonder that everybody gets to see.
And I think what we're seeing from the data, which we like to look at, is that people like to see less of us, because the shorts.
It turns out, yeah.
That
not that we're offended, but
people prefer the shorts at a ratio of about I don't know.
I think about 20 to 1,
60
isn't
to 1 or something.
We can tell this on YouTube in particular, can't we? Where the whole podcast is there and the short is there. So you can either have the half an hour version, and we get a certain number of listeners for that, or we get 20 times more watching the 1 minute condensed. Clip. Yeah.
Well, we won't take it personally.
Well, we could save ourselves a lot of time.
We could do, yeah.
If we were good at it, we could record live the 1 minute version.
Short, maybe we need to analyse it and just see what do people really want.
It's both to keep interrupting each other, saying 10 words.
Yeah. The magic.
Anyway, thanks a lot to Verity, Sam and Hannah, who are working their way out there to, after you've got this, it turns everything into the full video edited, the social media posting of it all, the reels, the shorts, the blog posts, the descriptions on the social media and everything else.
Yeah, we'll do a great job.
Good. Right, should we do another podcast?
We should do.
There we go then. Well, hello, this is the SME Growth Podcast from Wellmeadow Limited. I'm Dave Parry, and with me this afternoon is Rich Buckle, as ever.
Surprise, surprise.
One of these weeks, it won't be there.
It won't be there, yeah.
Then that'll be very different.
Yeah.
So what we're going to talk about this week, this is another one of those subjects that we've been thinking really needs to come higher up the running order. We need to get onto it. And it's the subject of CRM systems generally. I think most people sort of know what they are, but I think there's a lot of misconceptions about them. And certainly as we go around different clients, either where they already have them or they don't and they're thinking of putting them in, or they don't and they never want to touch one, you get quite a variety of opinions.
And I think they've probably evolved a lot over the last 10 years or so.
Neither of us clearly are old enough, Richard, to know what they would have been like.
Well,
however long ago.
No comment.
Say on that, yeah.
But yes, but they have come on a long way. I mean, I can remember back in the day almost making CRMs in not quite CRMs, but
well, they serve the function.
Serve the function of a CRM in Excel, and actually doing quite a lot of heavy lifting of quoting and all of that type of thing.
Well, some people may remember Sage Act or Goldmine, some of these ones, but all they really were was an electronic Rolodex.
Yeah.
Some people may remember Rolodexes. See them in films, in museums.
My granddad told me about it.
I think the interesting thing as well is what CRMs stands for is almost a misnomer enough, which shows where it came from.
Yeah.
So for those that don't know or have forgotten, customer relationship management doesn't really seem to do it now. I don't think you'd call it that now, would you? If you were to...
No, you probably wouldn't actually.
If you were to come up with a news acronym for what we now call CRMs, I don't know what it'd be.
I mean, I would say just looking at all the... we get to see quite a wide variety of CRMs, and actually probably a good percentage, maybe somewhere between even 20 and 50%, maybe even a bit higher, of the contacts within it aren't actually even customers.
True. I would say that's definitely true. And I would also say that of the contacts that are customers, they're pretty dormant from the system point of view. I don't think the owners of that CRM are necessarily using it to good effect. And I suppose the problem is that, in terms of that name anyway, the customer, implies that you start to use a CRM when somebody buys something from you.
Yeah.
Or maybe at a stretch, you quote them, so you want them to buy something from you, and then they either do or they don't. But it's seen as something for the sales team to worry about.
Yeah.
And they just put their stuff in there.
Maybe that's born out of some of the changes in the way that people buy over the last 10, 15, 20 years. So previously you'd see an advert on the TV or newspaper, back pre-internet days, and the sales funnel was normally pretty short, wasn't it? You saw the advert, you responded to the advert, the likelihood of you buying something was probably a bit higher just because fewer options. Whereas now, for a lot of products, services, there's a longer buying cycle.
Well, and you've got access to more information
Yeah.
because we're buying more digitally, researching online and, all that sort of thing. You can follow somebody around what their behaviour's been on other platforms while you've still got third-party cookies. I suppose you can put more information into a CRM. You can segment somebody a bit more, put a bit more history to how they came to find you in the first place. But I think another problem with the CRM way of calling it, and certainly the reputation that I think it's got, which has not done it any good at all as a type of software, is that I think salespeople in particular have grown by and large to hate them. Well, certainly the old school CRM systems and maybe the old school salespeople, where it's seen as this monster that you've got to feed. The system says, or even my boss says, I've got to write down every customer visit, every call, every email. I've got to make notes. I just want to get on and call the next customer or make the next visit. I don't want to be sitting here writing visit reports all day long. So I think CRMs have got a bad name for being, only negative, no benefit at all, just something to fill in.
Well, that's where you've got to start with the end in mind with these things, haven't you? So, like most things, and in fact, we were having this conversation this morning with a client. Like, don't just do something because you can. Yeah, and they were very insistent on knowing why you're doing it, and I think that is important when you're talking about a CRM. Otherwise, it will become a self-fulfilling prophecy that people will just either resent filling it in or sort of garbage in, garbage out, as our American cousins would say.
They would.
So,
and if we refer back to that conversation this morning with a client, I think he came up with quite a good test when he's challenged by his sales team. What do I need to put in? Not, I don't want to fill it in, but given that I've got to put it in, where do I draw the line? And he applies the test of if you were suddenly given that contact so that you are now the contact owner, you're working that deal or prospect or whatever, you've got to have enough information in there that if you were receiving it, you'd be able to pick it up and run with it.
Yeah.
And I thought that's the first time I've heard it put that way. And I thought that was pretty good. Yeah. Sort of, it's like treat others like you'd like to be treated type of rule, isn't it? That works quite well.
Yeah, so I think that's starting with the end in mind. What is it that you want to achieve out of using a CRM? I mean, we will often take it back to the vision and the strategy before we even start working on a CRM, which may seem a bit absurd, but it's important to know why you're doing these things. Yeah. And maybe touch on that a bit later.
Yeah, that's right. That then flows all the way through to the benefits you get from it, which we'll come back to in a minute as well. So I think probably before we leave that point, the key element, apart from the fact that CRM may be the wrong name from it, is certainly not just for customers. It's the scope of who goes into it. You mentioned already that maybe up to half the people in it aren't even customers in some cases. Yeah. Different types of industries vary, but it could be lots of introducers and advocates of yours that have never bought the product but have seen it. Could be suppliers, could be partners, and could be all sorts, couldn't it? So really the scope of who, which records you have in a CRM, it's your public. Whoever your company's public is. And it could be loads of people that you've never met. You don't even really know them. You might just about have their email address and maybe first name, last name, because somehow you've captured that information legitimately. That doesn't mean that you should be selling to them straight away. They're not fodder for the salespeople to go and browbeat. Yeah. It's just a place to say, right, we now know somebody. Let's look after them. What do they want from us? Can we educate them? Can we entertain them? And how can we add value to them? Yeah. So it's right from that end, right through to the customers, and then customers who are advocates, and maybe even lapsed customers if you look at it that end as well. So it's quite a broad spectrum.
Yeah, it's a very broad spectrum. So, I mean, and maybe it's worth saying there's lots of different types of CRMs you can choose to use. Yeah. We are HubSpot partners. So
we've now like colours to the mast on that. But that's a relatively, recent-ish thing, sort of 3-4 years ago, whatever it was now. And before that, we were often helping companies implement CRM systems, and we were technology agnostic, and we've used Pipedrive and Microsoft Dynamics and Salesforce and, some harebrained ones before that, and there's lots of other, especially lower budget ones out there, or specialist ones for different sectors. In fact, we've got an insurance company, haven't we, at the moment, which uses one that's very specially designed for their industry. But you're right, we chose after all that to...
And they have they have slightly different functions, don't they? I suppose historically HubSpot came out of more of a marketing focus, whereas
I'd have to look this up. I don't think HubSpot even had a CRM in it that long ago. Maybe 5 years ago or something. It was pretty much marketing automation software that then added the CRM on the end. Because before that, they used to work hand in glove with Salesforce. Salesforce took it on from CRM onwards, and HubSpot were thought of as a marketing company. And then they've both moved into each other's territory. See, I'd have to check my facts on that, but I'm pretty sure that it hasn't always had a CRM system in it. And of course now HubSpot are famous for giving that away for free.
Yeah.
What a stroke of genius in a way.
So you mean you can get a free HubSpot system? Only if you come through Wellmeadow.
Are we verging into adverts on behalf of HubSpot?
We're not sponsored.
Well, what I do say though, no, you're right. But what I do say to people looking for a CRM is there are plenty of cheapish ones out there. Yeah. But the HubSpot strategy is to give theirs away for free, hoping, and probably realistically, that you'll have to at least upgrade to a level of paying system as you want some more features. But if you just want what a lot of people think of as a CRM, just an online database to record prospects and customers, it does the job for nothing.
And I think as well, it's maybe worth pointing out that even within the HubSpot ecosystem, but across the spectrum of all the other different CRMs, there's plenty of free options. So if you just want to organize stuff, there's a lot of free options.
Yeah.
And you can get some very powerful functionality for 50 to 100, 200 pound a month, right the way up to, thousands a month at enterprise level. So there's something for everybody.
Yeah, and that's nice that they've organised it that way, because not everybody's going to want all the extra features. In fact, even reasonably sized, mid-sized companies can get away with an okay level of expenditure.
And and I suppose again it's back to starting with the end in mind, because we've come across a couple of companies recently that have probably had way more capacity than they needed within their CRM system. And so it's really about, just taking 5 minutes to think, well, what is it that we're trying to achieve with this?
And if we've got the tools and we're not using them, should we be? Let's not just use them for the sake of it. Yeah. The whole, man with only a hammer thinks all the world is a nail. But by the same token, we're all used to using Excel, and all admit to only using 5% max of what it can do. If only we knew everything else it could do, it could be quite useful. Okay, so that's a little bit of an intro of what is a CRM, who's it for, and what's the scope of it. Maybe we should move on and talk about what the benefits of having one then. Why bother? Back to start with end in mind. What's the end? What can it do for you?
I suppose at the very, a bit like back to the Rolodex example, it's a way of just organising a load of data at the base level, isn't it? You can organise all of your contacts, all the companies, everything in one sort of hopefully single source of the truth.
And that may sound really obvious and basic for lots of people, but there are still millions of companies out there that rely on the fact that most of their prospects, and possibly even their customers, the only place that contact data is really stored is in the salesman's phone. Yeah. And maybe their email client. And they're not necessarily even joined together.
Or even, we've just done a project where there were 3 or 4 different places where all the data was kept.
Yeah.
Some of it was duplicated in
different spellings of names and companies and categorizations and segmentations.
So I think CRM is about bringing it all under one ecosystem. Yeah,
common structure to it. And like you say, a single source of the truth, and it's much more shareable than the old Rolodex was, or indeed someone's phone or email client. That's not very shareable, and you can get into that, but it's still not great.
So you start getting into kind of operational efficiency is probably too grand a phrase for it, but it's starting down that path of, if somebody's off, you've got access to the contact information that you need, or the email thread, or picking up other people's projects, a bit like we talked before about if you've got to hand a deal over to somebody, it's all the information there that's needed. You can start to standardize what information's captured.
Well, and if you've got a journey mapped out, like you would say in a deal pipeline, you can look at any company or deal in there or opportunity and find out, well, how far are we at with this person? And maybe even challenge one of your colleagues. Are you spending more time on this person that just doesn't want to buy? Have you lost sight of the fact that they've not been qualified? They've not got to the next stage. You shouldn't be there, and you should be prioritizing your time separately. Or the other way around, you haven't been giving them enough attention because they've been giving all these buy signals, and we can all see that.
And so I think then as well that you've got probably starting to think about maybe expanding what a modern CRM looks like. You've got the whole process from kind of marketing, where you've got someone as a prospect, maybe nurturing them through to a lead, the sales, converting them into a customer, and then the whole customer service after sales.
Well, actually delivering the job and dealing with after sales,
And so you've got that entire life cycle of a customer.
Well, we talked about in a previous podcast, didn't we, the marketing as a process, and we didn't stop at marketing. But if it begins with a stranger and ends down the road somewhere as an advocate type referring customer. There's an awful lot of stages in between. And if you've got the right type of system, it can handle that whole journey.
Yeah.
And it's those handoff points, because you don't have one person in any reasonable sized company dealing with all of that life cycle of a person, a contact, or a company. So you need to hand over from marketing to sales, and then from sales to service or operations or whatever it is to the next bit. So you need to think about what that has to be designed like to cope with those handoffs, and even have definitions at the handover points, a bit like the baton handover in the relay race. You know, before I now call this your contact rather than mine, what do you need from me? What do I have to have asked and written down?
Yeah, I think maybe we talked about marketing qualified leads, sales qualified leads in other podcasts. That's and some companies even go as far as to having sort of service level agreements between those different phases within the within the process, and the CRM can then help that. So, one of the things that you can use within the CRM that we do is score different interactivities with people. So the CRM can be used to say, well, we've got someone's downloaded an ebook. So we had to just a couple of hours ago, someone downloaded an ebook, they scored 20 points, that triggered a certain thing because they'd done some other activities.
Yeah.
So it starts to talk about, or starts to move into areas like automation.
Well, I think that's one of the, it's probably difficult to choose what is the main benefit of a CRM, because all those other things are really important. The single source of the truth, the structure, the longevity of it, the shareability, the handoffs. But automation is so powerful. And because you want your system to work as autonomously as it can, especially something like a website that you want to be your salesman 24/7, certain things have got to happen automatically. People expect now that if you do something on a website when you're working at a time that suits you, 11 o'clock at night, that if they've requested something, they get the link back there and then, or they get access to the thing there and then, not the, thank you very much for your details, we'll contact you in the morning. It's got to be automatic. But it's way beyond that. The automation powers available now in all of these CRMs that we've seen allow everything from basic hygiene of the data, who's got a company name missing, or a first name, last name missing, or a duplicate record, or they haven't been given an owner, so no one's looking, right to that level, right through to the automatically sending out information to people who need it and keeping them informed, or even sending out information to the owners to say, look, this is a lapsed customer. This person was buying regularly up until X, and then they've stopped, or this person used to refer and they've stopped referring. You can build all that sort of automation as well.
And I think, like one of those points you made just at the start of that were about, using automation to keep your data clean. May seem like not trivial, but just that sort of housekeeping, a bit humdrum. But actually, the benefit of that is when you come to use it in your marketing, all of a sudden you've got that capability to really personalize a piece of content, or address somebody in a way that they want to be, with the proper name rather than a hi there.
Well, I got data. I think it was last week, or maybe the week before, and I won't name the company that sent it to me, but I did reply to them with a sort of a smiley face, tongue-in-cheek sort of response. But I got one of these, hi, open brackets, first name, close brackets, comma, thanks a lot for, blah, 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 giving me whatever it was they wanted to tell me. And I knew they were looking into different CRM systems in the past when I last spoke to them, and I just got this thing come out of the blue. So I sent it back saying, hi, first name, back. Thanks for your personalised email. And they were, very apologetic, a bit embarrassed, and told me they were about to change their CRM system. But it's not the CRM system, is it? That's just data hygiene, which a CRM system can help through automation to keep tidy. But you see so much of that.
And that's where I think if everyone understands, if I suppose maybe marketing a bit more aware, marketing people a bit more aware of this, because it's more their world. Sales busy on to the next deal, maybe not quite filling in so much information. We were talking about this again this morning, weren't we? To say, actually the benefits of sales putting in more information into the CRM, the impact that can have for their deal conversion rates, for their ability to market.
That particular company is quite interesting, isn't it? Because they're a very advanced level of understanding of qualification processes. And there's lots of those around there, but they're really going into quite a lot of depth as to not just paying lip service to them, but actually using them as a key gateway, and having playbooks for salespeople to make sure that they've all gone through the right processes. Their mantra is building for scale. They don't want this just to work for now, well, there's however many of them there are. They want it to work when they're 10 times bigger or 100 times bigger. So they've got to make sure they put those foundations in. It's quite interesting to work with them, isn't it? It's quite exciting project.
And that's where, again, CRM just gives you that foundation. foundation for scaling, doesn't it?
And you can do that, yeah. And I think one other there's loads of other benefits, but another biggie which people often lose sight of, but business owners should be aware of, is the impact on company valuation. And you think, well, how can that be linked? Just because I've got CRM, what's that all about? But we've seen this in due diligence processes time and again, haven't we? Someone says, what's your sales, what's your forecast? The conversation doesn't stop there.
Exactly. And I think one of the things we've always said is that actually by systemizing your business, like as a business owner, you want to be able to, you want to work yourself out of a job, really, because that's where the value is in the company to someone else. If you've got to hang around and sit in the corner and be cantankerous and everything, nobody wants that. So it's that case of working yourself out of a job, putting the systems in place, which a CRM and a decent marketing sales process is really going to add value.
Yeah. Wasn't there, I think it was Simon, wasn't it, someone we know, who built a part of his business around doing kind of a health check audit or a due diligence audit of sales pipelines.
On sales pipeline.
So if a private equity, I think he works mostly for, but if they were looking at investing in a company who claimed they had a pipeline of X million and whatever other opportunities, he would go in and check the veracity of that by how well they were keeping up to date the data. And it changed the valuation of the company.
Yeah.
Now, if you can change the multiple of a company from the sort of typical 4, 5, 6 by one notch, go from 6 to 7 or 5 to 6, and you're making £1 million a year EBITDA, then just by having your CRM well established has just added £1 million to your valuation.
I listened to a very good or interesting YouTube clip of Warren Buffett talking about EBITDA. He's not a fan.
He's not a fan of EBITDA. Does he have an alternative that he's a fan of then?
Well, he's not keen on depreciation not being counted.
I've often wondered about that, I should have written to Warren and said, oi.
Warren, yeah.
Yeah.
So who's the chappie that works with him? Charlie Munger, I think it is.
Because it is a cost of doing business, isn't it?
Absolutely. So you're just paying it at the start.
Yeah. If you didn't have depreciation, you'd revenue expense everything when it came through and you'd have lower profits then. So if you ignore that, I don't know, maybe there's some accounting reason why it's treated separately.
So, but it's an interesting kind of, they're not a fan of it at all as a way of valuing
in terms
a company.
of valuations, Okay,
Side
good.
note.
So they're not all. There are several of the benefits. There's enough there, I think, to persuade anybody who's a bit sceptical to look a little bit closer into having a CRM. But there are other benefits as well. You talked earlier on, didn't we? And you said you'd come back to it about starting with the end in mind.
Yeah.
And where does this all begin and what's it for and what are you trying to achieve with it? And you said back then that a good start point, which maybe surprises some people when you're talking about CRM, is the vision and strategy and where we're trying to get to.
Yeah, I mean, they almost seem kind of like it's not an oxymoron, whatever. They seem quite different. You're talking about CRM, filling in some data with some contact name and addresses. How does that link through to your vision and strategy? Well, I think really you've got to start with the end in mind with these things, because if you go, it's a bit like if you go one degree off course and then you carry on for a couple of years, you're really off course,
a long way off course
when where you want to be. So starting with the end in mind with the vision, just like where you want to get to, how you're going to get there with strategy, is a really helpful framework for starting just to build out, okay, well, what kind of data do we need to think about? What type of, how are we going to structure, what we're capturing? What kind of assets are we going to need? Which is all now part of the modern kind of CRM, is so integrated with marketing, or at least it should be. So having that understanding buyer personas. So, who is it that we're trying to fill this? Who are we trying to talk to here? Are we actually, analysing our CRM data to make sure it's got the people in it that we actually want?
Yeah, and I think, once again, one of the reasons why people may not quite get this point is that still 99% in my experience of communications I get from other companies, either ones that I've asked for or the spam that you don't, but may or may not be interesting, it's the same old. I know I'm getting the same output, same email that everybody else on their mailing list has just got. And yet the CRM has got the capability to segment me in so many different ways. What's my buyer persona? What industry I'm in? Who am I? Am I a decision maker? Am I an influencer? Am I bothered? And where am I at on my journey as well? Am I not even aware that this service offering exists, or maybe I am, but I'm thinking about it, or I'm right down to the point of deciding, which person. And we talked about buyer journeys back in one of our earlier podcasts, awareness, consideration, decision. So without having an understanding that by collecting the right information in the first place, you can then tailor the output. You won't even realize that you should be tailoring the output. You'll just assume, oh, it's okay, we send out a monthly newsletter. Oh, yeah, what sort of open rate did it get? Oh, yeah, not bad, a couple of %. Yeah. What sort of click rate does it get? Oh, well, it's not about clicking, it's about awareness. They're making excuses. If you're not sending out useful and interesting stuff, then people won't open it or click on it.
Yeah. So I think building that into your CRM almost as a philosophy almost, but also very practically to say, okay, well, how are we going to, even have we got a field to put in where they are at the buyer's, buyer journey? Are we really, integrating buyer personas in so that we can segment? So a lot of this is all about segmentation, so that you can have those options to say, well, we've got 5 buyer personas and we've got different.
Well, that was classic. You talked about that meeting this morning, where on the website they haven't named it this way, but they've created 4 different areas for their 4 top buyer personas.
Yeah.
Are you an executive? Are you this? Are you that? Or the other? And you're invited as a visitor to the website to click on one of the 4 areas where it takes you into more specific and detailed, tailored information for that area, which is perfect. That's what you want the website to do. Great design. What they haven't got to yet, but we'll be helping them do, is to make sure that when a user clicks on one of those 4, that then immediately updates the CRM database to say, right, this person self-identifies as this buyer persona of the 4. And at the moment, and most companies that haven't thought that through, would just wait for someone to explore the website, random walk-wise, and then at the end pop out, maybe give them a call or drop them an email or not. And yet that's a classic point where you can capture a key piece of information. They clicked that button rather than that button. It's not the click that mattered, it's which click.
And it's just, it's back to this, like, data is king, isn't it? Or, that's that kind of, once you've got that data, you can start to make decisions that are so much, have a lot more power, a lot more informed, and that's what a CRM can be used to harness and bring it all together in a structured, organised way.
You don't do it for the sake of it, just because you can. But if you imagine the goal in terms of the communications you have with your public, we talked about that term earlier on, then the ideal is that everything that everybody receives has been written solely for them.
Yeah.
Now, you can't get to that goal by scaling, but the closest you can get to it, that's kind of a measure of how well are we doing this? How well have we segmented our records and then tailored our output so that when somebody receives something, they don't think, oh my goodness, it's another one of those. They think, oh, that's interesting. I'm going to read that. I'm even maybe going to share it. That's the point of it, isn't it? If you've got that refinement, but you need to have designed your CRM properly.
Yeah, and I think, like you say, we all get those emails from various industry sectors, which will leave anonymous, that give you the latest update on a particular topic, and you, like you said, you can just tell this is just like 3 or 4 bullet points, bit of generic kind of information. Does it really add any value? Whereas I think we're moving into an era where we're seeing a lot more customization, a lot more, like even buying a burger or something from a well-known hamburger outlet. You can, gherkins, no gherkins, onion, everything is becoming customized. We're becoming accustomed to customization. Yeah. You can use that as a little soundbite for the, but like it is true. And as consumers, as business people, that is what we're getting used to now.
Yeah. Even my local Chinese takeaway, as soon as they pick up the phone, they say, "Hello, Mr. Parry."
Because you're so regular.
Yes, because I'm regular. I recognise my voice. Before I've said anything, they've got a caller ID on the line and the database on the back of it. That's not rocket science, right? That's been around for decades. Yeah. But I'm waiting now for them to say the usual order then. They don't do that bit. They still give me room to choose, even though I order the same thing.
They give you a recommendation.
See, that would be even better. Yeah, you normally choose the beef and black bean with green peppers. Yeah. Have you thought about trying that with the chicken or the vegetarian one? Yeah, they could do.
Omelette and chips.
Yeah. So you're right. We're moving into that era really where we've got that's going to be expected by consumers, and in business to business, it's still people buying, isn't it? We still have the same experiences and expectations. All right, good. There you go.
So yeah,
tour of force on that.
Do you want to talk about some of the challenges that we've seen, or
go on then? Let's just
briefly
round up with that, because I know that that's important.
Yeah, so I think some of the challenges that we've seen largely around probably data cleansing, I'd say. So
I know which particular example that you awake at night from that one.
Yeah, so I mean, it depends on how your data's stored from, where you're starting from. But if you've got data in multiple locations that maybe are duplicate, different spellings, different, we had a Wellmeadow Limited, Wellmeadow Ltd, all of those sorts of things.
It's the silly little things that people don't realise, that computers are quite pernickety. It's got to be exactly the same, otherwise it's not the same, isn't it? So.
And then too many free text. Free text fields are great for certain things, not great for other things. Don't have an industry sector that's a free text field,
yes,
because you'll get all sorts in it. Yeah. So it's those sorts of, again, I think it all stems from not starting with the end in mind. You can't really stress that enough with something like this, because it is like you're building a house, and you don't just start throwing bricks around. And
I think it's the problem when you build it as you go along. You think, I'll come back to that later. It's a lot easier to create a field which is free text than having to think about all the options you can have and cover every option. So it's easy just to get something up and running, you leave it as free text, and then a year later you realise the mistake. A monster.
I think another challenge is just creating that CRM culture. And I think really then people need to be taken on the journey to see, why is this valuable? Why, and oftentimes it's not valuable for me, it's valuable for someone else in a different department. And I think that's where you've got to try and let people see the big picture of, why are we doing this? Why is it important that you fill this piece of information in so that this person's job,
someone downstream
from you, is made easier, or they can even do it, or we can.
But that's true of business systems generally. The person in sales who takes the order needs to get that right. Otherwise, the person in manufacturing will make the wrong thing, or they'll be invoiced incorrectly, or sent to the wrong address. So we're all a bit used to that. But I think there's still enough benefit locally. If you use the system well, you get benefit too. Being more organised, being more automated, making it easier, fewer mistakes. But you're right. The culture, I would almost say the culture and the data integrity vie for first place in terms of the big challenges. And especially because I'd say the reputation that CRM systems have got by those who historically have been most forced to use them against their will, the sales community, that has been borne by a badly implemented system where you're expected to put loads of information in on a just-in-case basis. We might want to look at it one day. Well, if you ain't actually going to use it, then why bother collect it?
And maybe another, just to round it off, is another challenge is, or maybe it's not so much a challenge, but just trying to open people's eyes to what you can actually do with the data. So without wanting to do a shameless HubSpot plug, we have our website sitting on top of our CRM because HubSpot allows you to do that. Very, there's other software out there that will do it, but it's very joined up, very straightforward, very simple, which allows you to personalize web content. It allows you to use smart content to show certain people in certain lists, maybe certain content. There's so much more now that you can do, and I think part of the challenge is to open up people's mind to the possibilities.
The art of the possible
that a well-structured CRM can give you.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, well, there's a good few pointers there, which I'm sure people will be familiar with as well. So hopefully that's been a useful summary of CRMs, or maybe we should come up with another name for them. It's one of those things. Once it's been named, it's been named. Exactly, a Hoover is a Hoover, even if it's a Dyson. so it's a CRM forevermore, even if it's not just for customers, it's not just about relationships, and it's not just about management. But it's a something. Good. Okay. Thank you very much for that. You've been listening again to the SME Growth Podcast from Wellmeadow Limited. Thank you very much for listening. Please like and share our podcast wherever you get your podcasts from, and more importantly, tell your business colleagues and friends that we're worth a listen, and send them a link. And until next time, good luck with your businesses.